Alright, we're back at the 7.3 today, and we got the new injectors in. They're sitting in there in the cab. So what we're going to do, first off, is pull these glow plugs out. The glow plugs are located right here. And it's going to be a 10 millimeter. Need an extension on it. That's what your glow plug looks like. Now, this thing is rather oily. I'm gonna clean these up real good. Today, we get the new injectors sitting in here. GB remanufactured. All right, now we got all the glow plugs out. I cleaned them up. Here's what they look like. Now I'm not going to test these because they're not very old, but if yours have not been replaced, now would be a good time to test them. Ohm them out, make sure they're good. So we're fixing to go back in with the new injectors. This is the way they do them. Now you're going to need a rubber mallet for this, because what we're going to do is tap these down in there. So go ahead and open this thing up, make sure everything's on it. Alright, this little sleeve off, make sure all your gaskets are in place. Make sure to pull this black thing off the tip for sure, and make sure that copper washer's on there. Okay, everything looks good. We're going to slide this bracket up, just like we did when we took them out. Double, triple check everything. Slide that bracket up, or it'll make it over that bolt. These are going to be rather tight, so you want to take your mallet and tap them down in there while holding this bracket up. Try and get all this out of your way. You'll hear the sound whenever it bottoms out in that cup. I don't think we're quite there yet. Right there. Set that in there. Push the bracket up. Tap it down. That's what you're going to do with all of them. Get all that done, and then we'll go from there. Got them all in, and if you do get the rebuilds, sometimes you'll have one that's a different color, like that. Tapped them all in. The ones in the back are pretty hard to get to. I actually took the bottom of this, stuck it back there, and then hit the end of it up here with the other mallet. That worked out pretty well. So next thing what we're going to do is put all the bolts in the bottom of these things. Right. Got all these lower bolts back in. Snugged them up without over tightening them. Everything's set and good. Now we've got these oil wheel plugs. Very important you don't forget about these. So we're going to put those back in right here. Make sure the little gasket is on them. And we're going to spin them back in. Do not drop them into the motor. or anything crazy like that. Install these. This little C deal right here. It's going to go down. So make sure you put them in facing the right direction. They'll kind of clip into place a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug these injectors back in while leaving the glow plug wire loose, of course, and not only loose but out of the way of the rocker arm would be nice. All right. You can see this, but I like that little wire all the way down to hold that in place. After you get them plugged in, just like that. Do that all the way down here. Put the other valve cover gasket back on. Do the same thing over there. Get the injectors all plugged back in. Take a look at these plugs up here. Make sure they don't look burned or anything. I'm not too concerned about checking these out too good because they're not very old. I had these replaced not too long ago, so I'm not going to go too in depth with checking them. But if yours haven't been replaced, you might want to do that, because as soon as we put the valve cover back on, we'll plug those back in. And it's really crucial that these you make a good connection, and because that's what provides the power to your injectors and glow plugs. Whenever mine burned up, this thing just died. It was just sitting at a red light. It just quit. So that'll generally happen whenever those things go bad. All right, so now that we got all those hooked back up and the valve covers back on, the valve cover gaskets in place, spin the motor, blow all the residual oil out of the glow plug holes. That temporarily in place, and just put like a bolt in the top and bolts in the bottom. Just hold it on a little bit while we spin the motor. One thing you want to make real sure and do is take all this stuff off the turbo. This plastic bag and everything we put on the turbo. You want to get that off before you spin the motor so you don't suck it down in there. So I'm just going to put these on in the easiest place to get to. Just kind of a checklist. Make sure you got your oil rail drain plugs in, your glow plugs out, your injectors screwed down, and a couple of bolts in this thing. Plug these deals back in, and also your oil deflectors for each injector should be still removed. At this point, open up your little deals here. Make sure everything can breathe. Go over and do the other side. Should be set to spin this thing over. Right here, it's going to be your starter solenoid. I believe we need to jump from this top bolt where this plug is over to the positive. I believe that is the method, but we're going to find out in just a second. So I'm going to get all that squared away. All right, so what we're doing right now is solving the issue of the oil that's run down into the cylinders so that we don't vapor lock the motor by having that fluid in there with both valves closed on a compression stroke. That's what we want to avoid. That will bend rods and everything else. So with the glow plugs out, we're going to have zero compression, and we're just going to turn this thing over and blow it all out with the valve covers on and let it run back down. Make very sure it's not in gear if it's a standard. Alright, so that should have cleared out the problem. Should have blown everything out. Alright, now what we're going to do is remove those two bolts that we put on the valve covers and pull the valve covers back off so that we can install the glow plugs back in. Alright, we got all those glow plugs back in. Now we're going to take the little wires and plug in on top of them. You should be able to find it. It's hard to get the camera down here for it, but push those little wires back on top of the glow plugs. How you get power to them. So do all of those. Alright, so my battery's dying. I'm going to go plug it in. I'm just going to run you through the rest of what I'm doing, and then we'll film the startup. But I've put all the glow plugs back in. I've plugged them all back in. What I'm doing now is putting all the both valve covers back on and reassembling everything under the hood. So make sure you get the valve covers back on right. Remember, with all your nuts and bolts and brackets, you shouldn't have any extra parts. Every part has a place and it needs to be there. You know, there's certain ones that have the studs which you can put two nuts on. So you have the bracket mounts. Make sure all that goes back in the right place. And reassemble everything, and then we're going to crank it up. Alright, everything's back together. Valve covers, put all the top end back on. Now this thing is going to smoke pretty bad when you first start it up after doing the injectors, so just be prepared for that. You'll need to drive it a good bit and get it all blown out.
you can see, it takes a little while to fire these things off after you drain the oil well to that extent. You need to drive this thing and get it up to operating temperature, because right now, I don't know if you can see, but if I give it some gas, we got white smoke, like a lot of white smoke, which is normal. It's going to take a while to burn all that out, but the best way to do that is as soon as you get it back together, get it running, and just drive it. You know, it's got to burn all that stuff off that's in the cylinders and everything else. So just be patient with it and work all that white smoke out.